So hello guys and welcome back to my channel Firewall again. Today we are going to see 4 firewall management method. So Palo Alto Firewall gives you flexibility to manage your management thing. I mean manage your firewall, say configuration, planes, data, uh, setup, whatever, using 4 different method. So we are going to talk about that. Consider the Palo Alto Firewall. This is your Palo Alto Firewall, and this is a Palo Alto Firewall box, and this box can be managed using 4 different methods. Number 1, you can manage it using web interface. Number 2, you can manage it using CLI command line interface. Number 3, you can manage it using Panorama, okay, or if I can write it like simple Panorama, which is better, Panorama, and using XML API. So we are going to see these 4 methods one by one now, how you can use these methods to manage your Palo Alto firewall. So let's talk about number 1 is your web interface. So basically we all know to access firewall using web you have 2 options. One, you can use HTTP protocol, and one, you can use HTTPS protocol. Consider when you open your browser and you want to access something, or you want to access firewall, what you do, you generally type HTTP colon then IP address, or you can type the URL of your firewall. In this case, consider like IP address like 192.168.1.1, or you can give some URL like say my firewall name having this, so I can type it like firewall can, okay, and the firewall like that. So using HTTP or similar approach like HTTPS, you can put into the browser to configure your firewall access. We all know HTTP is not secure, it's vulnerable for malicious attacks, from the malicious attacks, and HTTPS is secure method, to deliver the access, right? So when you open your web browser, you type this and you're going to access your firewall. This is by default configured, we're going to see that, but you have a flexibility to modify this the way you want to access your firewall via web, whether you can use HTTP or HTTPS as per your requirement, right? We're going to see that as well. Let's talk about the second method, which is CLI command line tool. In command line tool, you have a flexibility to configure your firewall from command line. Basically, you can do the access of your firewall via some sort of software like, you know, putty, right? You can use the protocol like SSH to get login to your firewall, and this login will be the CLI access, and from this CLI access will be prompted with the command line console, where you can type the command, right? And using the utilities like configure and everything, you can deliver the further work on that. So we are going to see this thing as well. You know, the basic thing you can do from the CLI, like you can ping, you can do the trace route, you know, and of course you can configure the things when and how your firewall you wanted to do, right? Plus you can see the configuration of the firewall using command like show. There is a lot of things we can talk here, but for now just understand this is the another method from where you can do the firewall management, right? Now the third method, which is Panorama. So now consider that you have a firewall and you want to manage that firewall, but you also wanted that whatever you do the firewall management will be happen from the management device. Why so? I'll just tell you. So consider you have some soft piece or hardware called Panorama, which is from the Palo Alto products or software. This is specifically designed for the management purpose, right? It's like, you know, you can do the changes, setup, configuration on this device, and you can push this configuration towards or to the firewall, which is your Palo Alto firewall. So in the scenario, if firewall, if you want to have a, you know, a sort of protection of to the firewall, and you want to get rid of, you know, actually performing the changes onto the firewall, you can use Panorama for this purpose. Consider there is a scenario, you have a company's network, and you have a two different site, and one site you can host your Panorama management server, and one side you can host your firewalls, right? You can do that as well here. So from the Panorama you can push the configuration to the firewall, but consider the situation where something happen to this site. Consider DC1 and DC2, you know, say due to the power outage or some sort of failure, you lost access of this site, right? The functionality of the management server will stop, but the main thing, which is firewalling, will continue because of, you know, the separation and having the firewall in a different DC. I'm just giving you a rough example, one of the use case where how the Panorama is useful, if you have two different DCs, you can configure your one appliance like a Panorama into the one DC and the another one into the another DC, so that you will get the flexibility where if some DC is gone, the other DC will be up. But most probably, if the something happened to this DC, right, the power outage or something like that, you will be having the loss of your firewall communication for sure. So Panorama is more of doing the management thing. So it's like it has a capability to do the configuration, do everything here, and load to the firewall. Plus it gives you flexibility, whatever the changes and everything happens here, you know until you push those changes to the firewall, you know there is no issue to the firewall. I mean, there is no worriness from the firewall side, because if you made any changes here and due to that this device goes down, your firewall will stay up, because there's no relation between this device to this device, as the Panorama is completely doing the management part and firewall is doing the firewalling part. And until you commit these changes, it will not come into the picture like acting as a running configuration. So this is one of the use cases where you can utilize Panorama. So this is the third one, and now let's discuss the last one, which is XML API. Okay, now so the XML API provide representation state transfer, which we call REST. REST stand for representation state transfer. I know many of you don't know the full form of the REST. So this is REST is a representation state transfer based interface to access firewall configuration. So using a REST method, you can configure the firewall, operational status, reports, packet captures. You can do a lot of things using this REST API. So an API browser is available on the firewall, but for that what you need to do, on your browser, okay, consider this is your PC's browser, you have to type https ::, and you have to give the IP address of your firewall, or whatever the name you have given to the firewall, which is mapped with the IP address, and then you have to give the / and then the API word, right? So where this firewall host name or IP address you can give as per your, and then you can use this API to access and manage your firewall through third-party service, application, or script. So there is a lot here we can give. So it will look like, say, https : the IP address of your firewall, say 192.168.1.1, the / API, and then you will see the API structure, right? Now let's go ahead and see all these things that will be practically, and we'll conclude our video.
Now let's see these 4 management methods. Number 1, we will access the Palo Alto via web UI, or you call it a web interface. My IP address of my device is 192.168.1.25, and now I'm here using HTTPS method because that is by default what the Palo Alto allows. And once you accept the connection request, it will ask you for the username password. By default, initial username password is admin as a username and admin as a password, which you need to give. And once you have provided those details, you will be able to access Palo Alto. If you come to the device, and if you see there is something called management setting here, if you select this management setting, you can see what IP address you have currently, what net mask, what default gateway you have configured, and what services are you allowing. right? Now let me come here, edit, and as we discuss, we have a scope to define. If you want to define HTTPS, HTTP or HTTPS, the tenant services, SSH services, ping services, rest of the services, you know, what IP address you need to have. So here you can add the IP address which you wanted to allow. So this is that simple, guys. Depending on your requirement, you can deliver your basic work, right? So you can put IP address here which you want to allow to have the access to your Palo Alto devices. All right, let me just clear up the screen and just show you. If you say add, you can give the IP address here, for example 192.168.1.100, you know, so only this IP address is permitted, the rest will not, like that, to have the access to this web access console, right? You can set your MTU, you can set your negotiation methods. So this is the one way you can access your access to your firewall using the web interface. The second option is using CLI. So if you have a tool like a PuTTY, you can just go ahead and give the IP address to the PuTTY session, for the PuTTY session. So I'm just putting the IP address details here, and as you can see, it's asking me for the username and a password. Let me give the default username and password. So right now, as you can see, I am into the this CLI session, and as you can see, I am at the console of admin. So if you remember, we discussed about the commands like show command, configure command. So from this interface, you can go for the show commands. So these are the all show commands available. You can use those commands to see the stuff. For example, let me show you show interface, okay, and which interface you want to see. If I say management and enter, so it will give you all the basic details of the management interface. So if you see there's a name, management interface, then what MAC it's learning, what IP address it has, what default mask, what default gateway, and the byte receive transfer on this interface. You can go get these details from here, and there's a lot you can perform with the show command, right? So it's up to you how you can do, and whatever the commands available here, you just press tab, it will give you the commands. An option we have discussed about the configure, the command. The command is configure, and as you can see, once I put the command configure, I entered into the configuration mode, and in configuration mode you can set what you want to set. Say set device config, right? You can give the details, what you want to set, system IP address, whatever. So if I want to change the management server IP address, I can just give this details like this, then the IP address what I want to go for, like that. You can set the details, you can set or you can perform the configuration from this option from the configuration. So this is the second way how you can go for the changes in the configuration, and end of the day, once configuration is performed, you can commit it, and the commit will push the configuration from your to the firewall. Let's go for the third option which we have discussed, is Panorama. But before that, let's go for the XML API. So the command, the URL syntax is you have to give the HTTPS, the IP address of firewall, which is 25, and then you have to give / and name API. Once you type that, you will get the API thing here, and from here also you can deliver your REST. You can deliver the REST work, configuration work, as we have discussed. So you can commit You can see the configuration command, you can export the config, import the config, you see the logs, you can run the operation command, you can go for the reports, and you can go for the user ID. With the latest version you will be seeing more options, so you can do from this API. If I say commit, it's giving me this what XML command you are going to hit to the firewall. It's giving here like commit, I'm doing the commit. So if I say submit, it's saying response status success code, there is no changes to the firewall, so the commit won't happen. Like that, if I go back, if I go the configuration commands, whatever the command I want to give, I can give it from here. Say management config, it's saying me what management config, depending on your configuration and requirement, you have to use this console, guys. So let me log in. As you can see the name here, the Panorama. The Panorama, as we discussed, it's a management device. You can see there is a Panorama, the tab, which is a different tab than the firewall what we have. And if you go to this tab, you will see the options for the configuration. And here you can see you can configure the Panorama similar way that you can configure the firewalls. So if you say edit this option, you can select services what you need to have to access, which services or protocol you can use to have the access to this. For now, if I enable HTTP and if I say OK, and then if I say commit, then it will give you a choice that you can access the Panorama using HTTP protocol as well. And if you close this runs in a background. Meanwhile, we will see the stubs what we have here. So in upcoming videos we will see all these options, how you do the configuration. This is how you can do the management of your firewall using 4 different options like Panorama, REST API, CLI, and web interface. So guys, thanks for watching this video and have a wonderful day.